So this story starts on a street in China. Here, we see a man named Li, who is trying to push his way through the crowd. However, since the traffic light was red, he couldn't cross the street. But then, Li noticed that someone in the crowd was following him. So as soon as the light turned green, he quickly crossed the street to the other side. And that's when Li realized that the person really was following him. So he ran into a building and took the elevator to an apartment. But that person also followed him, taking pictures from a distance and sending them to Li's wife. We learn that the apartment Li went into belonged to a woman with whom Li was having an extramarital affair. That's why Li's wife had hired this stranger to find out everything about her husband. And when this person sent her the pictures along with the location, a little later, some thugs arrived at the apartment and forcibly dragged Li out of there. And just like that, the stranger's job was complete. We then learned that this man's name is Ken, and he's a private detective. He's specifically hired by people who suspect their partners of cheating. And Ken charges a hefty sum for these jobs. Next, we see Ken back at his office, talking on the phone with a client who still hadn't paid the full amount, even after the job was done. But then, a new client arrived at his office, a woman named Seo. As soon as Ken saw Seo, he handed her a form. He asked her to fill in the information about the person she wanted to find or get information about. We then see her write Anna's name. She told him, "Anna is my fiancé. Our wedding was supposed to be this year, but for some reason, it got put on hold. And ever since then, Anna has suddenly gone missing. I can't find her anywhere." Ken, reading the paper Seo had written on, asked her, "Did you ever try to find Anna yourself?" Seo replied, "Yes, I tried everything, but I couldn't find her anywhere." So Ken asked her, "Did you try to contact her parents?" Seo said, "Anna doesn't have any parents. So I went straight to her place. But since it was dark inside, I figured she wasn't home." However, Ken then told her, "Just because it's dark inside doesn't mean the person isn't there. Maybe she's trying to avoid you." So Ken asked her again, "Why did you two fight anyway?" And then we see Seo hesitate and say, "Well, I suspected Anna was seeing someone else. And that's what we fought about." Hearing this, Ken told her, "So I need to find that third person, where Anna might be hiding out. And that's why you came to me, right?" Seo confirmed with a yes. Later, we see Ken at home that night, when his wife came home late. We could tell from seeing them that their relationship wasn't doing so well. Meanwhile, we see a serial killer trying to strangle a girl to death. Eventually, he killed her and left her there. The next morning, when the police found her body, the case was assigned to Officer Han. When Han arrived and saw the situation, he first asked his colleagues, "Who found this body first?" His colleague replied, "A worker found the body first. He came here in the morning after hearing dogs barking. But when he saw the body, he couldn't bear such a horrific sight. He fainted, and now we've admitted him to the hospital." Just then, another one of Han's colleagues came and told him, "Those dogs have wiped out all the criminals' footprints. So now we don't have much evidence." Hearing this, Han ordered them to interrogate the people in the 30 surrounding houses, because maybe someone saw something, and through that they might be able to solve the case. Besides, he also told them to arrange for the body to be identified, and if there were any relatives of the deceased, to contact them and inform them of the news. But then an officer told him, actually, a missing persons report had been filed for a woman a few days ago, and this body belongs to that woman. According to that missing persons report, this girl's name is Yak, and she herself had filed a complaint against her husband a few days ago. Hearing this, Han asked them to look into her husband, but then we see Officer Han collapse there due to excessive work stress. And when he regained consciousness at the hospital, he went to the emergency department to see his wife, who had been in this emergency department for the past 10 years. We aren't told what happened or why she's there. Meanwhile, we see Ken sitting in a restaurant eating. But then his old friend, Hung, came to meet him there. Hung actually works for a mafia boss. And now he told Ken, "My boss needs you, because he wants you to keep an eye on his girlfriend, Brady. He suspects she's having an affair somewhere else." However, we see Ken flat out refuse him. He said, "I don't take cases involving the mafia anymore, because they're too risky." But Hung somehow managed to convince him by saying, "You'll be paid a large sum for this. Besides, this will be kept completely confidential. It won't be shared with anyone." The next day, Ken was sent a picture of that girl named Brady, who was Hung's boss's girlfriend. But then, a man named James came into his office. He showed Ken a picture and said, "I want information about this girl." However, after seeing this picture, Ken was completely stunned because, in fact, this picture was of his wife. But still, he hid everything and asked him, "What exactly do you want to know about this woman?" Then this man told him, "Her name is Sarah, and she's my girlfriend. And I suspect she's having an affair somewhere else. She's cheating on me." But then Ken asked him, "Why do you think she's cheating on you?" James told him, "She's always with me. She's even with me until midnight. But after that, she goes somewhere. And she always tells me she had an urgent errand." And hearing all this, Ken clearly understood why his wife came home late every night. Anyway, Ken was about to say something. Before he could, this man gave Ken a check for $10,000 and quickly left. So now Ken had a total of 3 cases, which he couldn't handle alone, even if he wanted to. The first case was Anna's, whom a man named Co had come to find. The second case was Brady's, who was the gangster boss's girlfriend. And the third case was his own wife's. So he called in his junior assistants, Kanta and Kim. And he told them both, "I'll handle the first 2 cases myself. So I'm giving you the third case," meaning his wife's case. But when they saw the picture of his wife, they said, "Sir, that's ma'am." Then he said, "Yes, so what if it's your ma'am? This morning, a man came to me with her picture and complained that she's cheating on him. Now, since I can't follow my own wife, I'm giving you this responsibility. You 2 follow my wife and catch her red-handed with that guy." Although hearing all this, they were both completely shocked. But there was nothing they could do. Next, we see Ken waiting for Brady outside her house the next day. But then he got a call. It was one of his agents. And he told Ken that Anna hadn't been using her phone for a long time. She hadn't even made any calls with it. So it had become difficult to find her location. But then Ken asked him, "Is there any way we can find her location using her SIM card number?" Then he said, "Yes, there is a way. I know a hacker. He can do this job if he wants to. But it'll cost a lot of money." But hearing this, Ken made it clear to him that he couldn't possibly spend that much money on this job. After saying this, he hung up and looked ahead, and he saw Brady leaving the house and going somewhere. So he snuck into Brady's apartment. And he installed a micro CCTV camera in a corner of the wall. Meanwhile, Officer Han's colleague came and told him that on the night Yak died, her husband was busy at the casino all night. And just then, a female officer came and told him that a CCTV camera was installed in a nearby house where Yak died. And they found out that something was recorded on that camera that could help their case. Hearing this, Han ordered her to quickly go and collect the CCTV footage from him. Meanwhile, Ken followed Brady to a DJ party. But here, he ran into another detective named Man. And when he started talking with Man told him, "Actually, the gangster boss had initially hired me to follow Brady." And hearing this, Ken teased him a bit. He said, "So the boss didn't get any information through you. That's why he was forced to hire me." But then, when he started talking with Man, in the middle of the conversation, Ken asked him, "If someone hired you to spy on your wife, would you take that case?" Man told him, "No, I wouldn't take such a case. Because if I already know my wife is cheating on me, what could I do after catching her red-handed with that guy? I could only get a divorce." And we see that this thought stuck in Ken's mind. That's why when his wife came home late that night, Ken completely ignored her this time. And his wife also noticed that Ken neither asked her anything nor said anything to her today. Anyway, the next day, when Ken was waiting outside Brady's house, after seeing Brady, he asked her to get in the car. But Brady asked him, "Who are you? Why should I get in your car?" Then he told her, "I work for your boyfriend, the gangster Marco." Hearing this, Brady got in his car. But then Ken showed her a video on his phone where she was kissing another guy. At first, seeing this, Brady got a little scared. Later, smoking a cigarette, she told him, "If you need money, I don't have any." But then Ken told her, "I've been finding videos like this for 30 years. If I needed money, I would have become a millionaire by now. But since this is my job, I have to do it. Besides, I don't want to mess with a gangster like Marco." And hearing this, Brady told him, "Another detective did this exact same thing before. When he showed me the video, I told him, if you show this video to Marco, I'll tell Marco that you blackmailed me with this video and had sex with me. If Marco hears that, he'll kill you." And hearing this, out of fear, that guy deleted the video from his phone. And hearing this, Ken clearly understood that the detective was probably Man, whom he had met at the club. Although Brady got out of the car and left after saying this, Ken got very worried here, because he didn't know what to do now. Later, when Ken was sitting in a restaurant, that man named James called him, and he told him, "You don't need to follow Sarah anymore, because everything has been resolved." But hearing this, Ken became completely curious. He wondered, what happened that Sarah suddenly became completely fine? And now the client wants to drop the case. So to find out more about his wife, he called his assistant and asked about what happened today. But his assistant said he couldn't follow Sarah today because he had to prepare for his exam. But hearing this, even though Ken was very angry, he couldn't really say anything. But then he got a call from one of his agents. And he told him that he had found Anna's location because Anna had used her phone for a short time. And then he also sent Anna's location to Ken's phone. And as soon as Ken got this location, he quickly went to that location. But when he got here, he found out that this place was none other than Anna's house. Later, when Ken was hiding behind the car, trying to see what was happening inside Anna's house, suddenly a car pulled up in front of him, and a man got out of this car and went into Anna's house. So Ken thought that the person who got out of this car was probably Anna's secret boyfriend. So he secretly went behind the car and took a picture of the car's license plate. But just then, he got a call from his assistant, who said he saw Sarah and James going to a hotel. But he couldn't follow them because of his exam. Hearing this, Ken quickly left Anna's house and went to that hotel. First, he got very angry at his assistant. Then he went into the hotel and caught his wife, Sarah, and that man named James red-handed. But he didn't want to make a scene in public here, so he dragged Sarah into the car. And they started arguing in the car. We see Sarah tell him, "I told James to become a client for you, so you'd find out about our affair. But even after knowing all this, you never talked to me about it at home." But then Ken told her, "I was always faithful. But what value did you place on my faithfulness?" But Sarah clearly told him, "You never had time for me. Today you have time for me. That's why I want a divorce from you." But hearing this, Ken was shattered. But he left, telling her, "Remember this. This was your decision." The next morning, we see that Ken wasn't doing too well. Perhaps he was a bit upset about everything that happened last night. But then Seo came to meet him. And crying, she told him, "Anna is dead. I just identified her body. Someone strangled her to death." But hearing this, Ken clearly understood that perhaps Anna was killed by the man who came to meet her last night. But he didn't tell Seo this now, because he was very upset himself. Ken then went straight to the police station, and he came and told Officer Han, "I'm a private detective, and a man named Seo sent me to follow Anna, because Seo suspected Anna was cheating on him and having an affair somewhere else. That's why I went outside her house last night to follow her. But then a man went into her room, who might have killed her. Although I couldn't see his face, I have a picture of his car's license plate." And when Officer Han got this picture, he quickly asked them to verify that license plate. And then he asked him, "Did you see that guy kill her?" Ken said, "No, I didn't see that guy kill her. Because I received news that my wife was at a hotel. So I had to go there quickly. And that's why I couldn't see this." So Officer Han then asked him, "When you saw that guy there, was anyone else with you? I mean, any other witnesses?" Ken said, "No, there was no one else there. It was just me." But just then, a junior officer came and told Han, "This license plate is a fake license plate, and it wasn't verified." And hearing this, Officer Han pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket and started wiping the sweat from his neck. And seeing this, Ken clearly understood that the man he saw last night was wiping the sweat from his neck in the exact same way with a handkerchief. So he became certain that Anna's secret boyfriend and her killer was none other than Officer Han. However, since he couldn't directly say this now, he decided to stay silent. So Officer Han then told him, "Since you didn't see anyone kill her, we can't suspect anyone. But your information will definitely help us." Saying this, he told him to leave. But when Ken went outside and got into his car, Han was looking at him through the window upstairs. And after seeing his scared body language, Han clearly understood that Ken knew the truth. Ken then went and told his friend Hung everything. But hearing this, Hung started laughing. He said, "So everyone who wipes sweat with a handkerchief is a killer?" Honestly, anyone would go crazy laughing after hearing your theory. But Ken clearly told him he was actually telling the truth. That's why Officer Han was secretly watching him. And he now wants to find evidence against him by any means necessary. And he wants to punish him for his misdeeds. But hearing this, his friend Hung told him, Officer Han is a police officer. If you try to do anything against him, and he frames you in another case and arrests you, then you'll end up in jail yourself. And hearing this, Ken got a little scared, and he fell into deep thought. But then that night, Ken came and met Hung again. And he gave him a locket-like tracker and said, "Would you want to keep this?" But then his friend asked him, "Did you find out anything about Brady?" Ken told him, "I got some footage of Brady. If I show this footage to your boss will kill you. Because I found out that Brady is having an affair with you." Hearing this, he got very scared. And he said he would listen to everything Ken said. But the condition was that he shouldn't tell his boss about this. The next day, we see Ken come to the victim's house with his two assistants, Kim and Kanta. And here, by investigating a bit, they try to figure out what the victim did last. He found out that the two victims who recently died both tried to call the police station number right before their deaths. Seeing this, he clearly understood that the serial killer was none other than Officer Han. So he decided to spy on Officer Han. However, since Officer Han knows him very well, he couldn't do this job himself. And he couldn't have his assistants do it either. He needed a professional detective. And that's when Detective Man's name came to his mind. And he gave him this job. Next, we see Detective Man start following Officer Han all day. He saw that every morning, Officer Han comes to a hospital. And after seeing his wife, who was in a coma, he leaves. Even after leaving the hospital, Detective Man continued to follow him. In the evening, he saw Officer Han driving somewhere. So he also started following him on a motorcycle. He saw Officer Han going towards a stadium. So he also followed him into the stadium. However, in the crowd at the stadium, he suddenly disappeared. So Detective Man came to Ken, extremely angry, and he asked him, "What exactly is Officer Han's case? Why did you put me on his tail? Tell me everything clearly." Then Ken told him, "Officer Han is a serial killer, and I want to find evidence against him at any cost." But hearing this, Man noticed that Officer Han had unknowingly put a sticker on his back and left. So Detective Man got very scared. He thought Han could have killed him like that, but he had let him go. So he quit Ken's job and quickly left. The next day, Ken's wife, Sarah, came and gave Ken the divorce papers and asked him to sign them. But Ken flat out refused. So they started arguing again. But just then, someone knocked on their door. And when Sarah went and opened the door, she saw it was Officer Han. And as soon as Ken saw Han, he quickly told him to leave. But Han told him, "I've come to check your IDs." So he gave him both their IDs. And as Han was checking the IDs, he threatened Ken in a low voice, saying, "If you try to spy on me again, it won't end well. This will bring terrible consequences for you and your wife, Sarah." But then Ken told him not to drag his wife into this. Otherwise, he also knew that Han's wife was in the hospital. And then Han left, saying, "Try to stay away from me and don't interfere with my work." And right after this, we see Ken come to the metro station with Sarah, because he was trying to send her somewhere far away, so Officer Han couldn't harm her. And then Sarah noticed that Ken worries a lot about her. He loves her very much. Meanwhile, Officer Han secretly came to Ken's office. Here, he pulled out the extramarital affair files and started reading them carefully. He also took a picture of Ken's wife's photo, so he could use it later. On the other hand, we see Ken come to a safe place with his wife. And as they were talking here, Sarah told him that she never cheated on Ken. Actually, what he saw at the hotel was a setup. Because Sarah felt that Ken had become so busy with his work that he didn't even think about Sarah anymore. That's why she and James created the setup. And then Ken told her, "I already knew this. Because the picture James brought was an anniversary photo of ours. And that photo made me suspicious. Why would a lover bring me an anniversary photo of his girlfriend? And I also knew very well that only you had this photo." Ken and his wife then went to a hotel, and they both decided to stay in 2 separate rooms. Meanwhile, Officer Han rushed to the hospital. He found out his wife had died. He got very upset here, and he told her, "You can't die like this." But we'll find out soon why he was saying that. We see Han was very angry after leaving the hospital, and he was also broken inside. So he called Ken, and he asked him, "You've handled so many cases, but what would you say about all those unfaithful women whose cases you've handled?" Then Ken asked him, "What exactly do you mean? Tell me clearly." And from here, we go into a flashback. Actually, 10 months ago, Han had seen his wife with another man, so he started following them. And later he found out that his wife was having an affair with that man. However, his wife had also seen Han in the rear-view mirror, so she clearly understood that Han had seen their intimate moment, and now he would probably come after them. So she immediately started driving away with her boyfriend. But Han was so enraged then that he not only followed them, but also caused a car accident. And due to that horrific accident, her boyfriend died there, and his wife was seriously injured. When Han went closer to check, he saw his wife alive, but after seeing her in a critical condition, he quickly admitted her to the hospital. And then the doctors informed him that his wife had gone into a coma, and there was no chance of her recovering anytime soon. Then his senior officer came and told him, "The man with your wife died, but I'll tell everyone it was an accident." But hearing this, Han told him, "That's exactly what worries me, that my wife is in a coma, and this was an accident." And then we learn that Han didn't actually come to the hospital to visit his wife because he loved her. Rather, he came to visit her so that when his wife regained consciousness, he could strangle her to death. However, his wife never regained consciousness. So as days passed, Han became more and more enraged. That's why he had become very bad-tempered. But during this time, a woman named Yak came to the police station to file a complaint against her husband, because her husband used to beat her often. But when Officer Han spied on that woman instead, he found out that the woman who filed a complaint against her husband was actually having affairs with many men. And she used to fight with her husband over all these things. And that's why her husband would sometimes beat her. So, he trapped Yak in his web, and they went to a secret meeting place. But there, he saw his wife's face in Yak's face, who had cheated on him in the same way. So, he became very angry and, mistaking Yak for his wife, killed her right there. But hearing this, Ken told him, "Are you out of your mind? How can you kill a person like that?" Actually, it could also be that her husband was beating her, which is why she later got involved in affairs outside. How can you kill someone without thinking? But then Han told him, "Just listen to what I'm saying. Keep your mouth shut. Actually, I found my new target in your office. Her name is Brady, whose picture I found in your office. Actually, this woman was also cheating on her boyfriend, and all these women have no right to live." And as soon as he heard this, Ken started calling Brady. However, since she was in the club, she couldn't answer his call due to the noise. And meanwhile, when Brady finished the party and came outside, her boyfriend Hung came to meet her. And he started arguing with her, because she had danced with a member of a rival gang. But then Officer Han also arrived here, who introduced himself as a police officer, and tried to calm them down. On the other hand, we see Ken kept calling Brady repeatedly. However, since Brady wasn't answering, he came to her last known location. But when he got here, he saw that the police had seized Brady's phone and all her belongings. So he called his friend Hung, whose face was bandaged, and he told him, "Actually, last night, Brady and I were arguing about something." But then a police officer attacked Brady directly and knocked her unconscious. And he was trying to take her somewhere. I tried hard to save her. But since I was very badly injured, I couldn't save her. But then Ken asked Hung, "Can you give me some idea where Officer Han took Brady?" Then Hung told him, "Actually, the tracker keychain you gave me as a gift. I gave it to Brady as a gift." So, Han finally found Brady's location using that tracker, and came to that location. Here he saw a car, and he saw some kids. He saw that the car's driver was eating at a restaurant. So he suspected that Han's direction might have been recorded on the car's dashcam. So he tried to break the glass with a stone to check the dashcam. But seeing this, the car owner gave him the keys. And when Ken checked the dashcam, he saw that Han's car went left from here. So he also started going left. And going a little further, with the help of another car's dashcam, he found out that Han's car went straight. Then, going a little further, Ken finally found Officer Han's car, whose trunk was open. But then he called Han and told him to call the police and tell them to come here, so the police could catch Han before he finished following him. Ken then finally came into the room where Han had sprayed poisonous gas. Actually, he wanted to kill himself along with Brady now, because he couldn't kill his wife with his own hands. so he couldn't control his anger. That's why he wanted to end his own life. However, we see Ken come into the room and somehow try to take Brady away from Han's side. And he opened the door and windows so the poisonous gas would go out, and Han's life would also be saved. However, we see that as the effect of the gas wore off, Han finally regained consciousness. And he came and attacked Ken. And then a fierce fight started between them in the swimming pool. However, during this fight, Ken was forced to kill Han, whose condition was already worsened by the poisonous gas. Then we're shown a scene from 3 months later. We see that Ken has been discharged from the hospital because he was also badly injured while fighting with Han. Now he comes and meets Hung, and he tells him, actually, in this entire case, only that girl named Anna was innocent, and the others who died were criminals in some way. Then he tells him, actually that night, Officer Han had gone to meet Anna using his police ID, and he was asking for the CCTV footage. Because when Han was committing the murders, everything was recorded on the CCTV camera installed in Anna's house. Meaning, if the police got this footage, they could easily catch Han. That's why Han went to get that footage. However, Anna told him to talk to her senior before giving him the footage. And that's why when Anna tried to call the police station, Han strangled her to death. Actually, Anna was killed only to hide evidence. She wasn't a criminal, nor had she committed any crime. And at the very end, we see that Ken and Sarah's relationship has also been mended, and they have backed out of the divorce decision. And at this interesting point, the entire movie ends here.